Yo, 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 what up with it? Hey, this is Dr. D, your host of Dr. D's Takes. Thanks for joining me, where today we will be discussing your Oklahoma City Thunder versus the Spurs, a Western Conference preview. So welcome again. I definitely appreciate you guys taking the time to join me here. I've appreciated the support that I've gotten so far. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe if you're enjoying this content. So with that being said, let's jump into the content. Class is about to start. So check it out. We've reached an exciting time here. I think everybody's been really looking forward to this Oklahoma City and San Antonio Spurs matchup. This has been a long time coming. And, so here's my deal. While I admit that I bleed Thunder blue, I do. At the same token, I'm able to have a conversation where I'm not going to just do content and glaze my favorite team. My team is not perfect. And best believe if OKC does something I don't like, I'm going to call them out on it. If the Spurs do something that's good, I'm going to give them their props for it. So, even for those of you who may not be Oklahoma City fans, hopefully you can, join and enjoy this content from a person who will be as neutral as possible. Right? So with that being said, let's just jump right into it. Now, obviously, there's another game tonight, and we got Cleveland, Detroit over on the eastern side that are in their game 7. I would give a prediction, but if I'm wrong, I don't want that to be on air. But if my life depended on it, I think Detroit will win. I don't know, obviously, but I kind of think Detroit might get Cleveland. Detroit seems like they keep coming back from the dead, and so they play really good defense, and good defensive teams typically can be really successful. So that's kind of my guess for the Eastern Conference side, is that I expect Detroit to beat Cleveland tonight. But anyway, let's get back to what we are here to talk about, and that is your Oklahoma City Thunder against the San Antonio Spurs. And, of course, that series begins on Monday, May 18th. And, when you really think about this matchup, as I was alluding to earlier, this is the matchup that everybody wants to see. It's like the future is now. You have two teams that are very, very similar. I have to admit that they're very similar. Both teams are very young, well coached, play really good defense, have unicorns at center, athletic guard play. Even though San Antonio obviously is a much older franchise than the Thunder, there's a lot of history. There's a winning tradition that is in place for these teams. And when you really think about it, Shea, who was named MVP today, congratulations, props to Shea, back-to-back MVP. And I'm pretty sure Wemby will be winning some in the future. But those two as leaders of those teams could define the next decade. I think you can anticipate a lot of San Antonio OKC matchups in the Western Conference Finals over the next 8 to 10 years. Because they're both young, they're both loaded, they're both well coached. The winner, I don't see one team running off. I think these boys are going to be boxing. This thing is going to go, hopefully not back and forth, because I want my team to win, but I'm just saying respectfully, I respect the Spurs. Those boys are tough. And I'm not going into this series just saying I'm guaranteed that we're going to win. I hope we win. I expect to win. But I also know it's not going to be easy. So let's talk about how we got here before we dive into it. So, it's Oklahoma City. A lot of people are saying we had the easy path. Granted, we did play the Suns. They weren't a whole lot of competition. I do think Phoenix probably could have gave us a little more run for our money had Mark Williams played, but at the end of the day, they were not going to beat OKC. And the Lakers, I think we were just toying with the Lakers like a toddler, toying around with a little baby toy or something. I had fun watching that series. I love watching LeBron suffer. The only thing that would have been more fun would have been watching Luka suffer. And I enjoyed watching Reeves suffer because they just do so much whining. So I had a really, really, really good time beating the Lakers. As for San Antonio, when people are saying that OKC had an easy path, man, come on, stop the cap. You think about it, Spurs, they have had a pretty easy path as well. Portland, they played Portland. I mean, come on. I'm surprised Portland even won a game, but Portland was actually hanging with them for a while. Excuse me, but San Antonio was just too much for them. But I mean, Portland never had a chance to beat San Antonio. And then, of course, San Antonio ran into Minnesota. That came into there, Dante was out for the year. That's a big loss for that team. And then you also had a hobbled Anthony Edwards, who was probably playing at about 50%. So in my opinion, I mean, the two best teams are where they're supposed to be. But we can't sit here and pretend like one team had a tough path to get there. Now, I do believe had Denver beaten Minnesota, that Spurs-Denver series would have been an epic one. And I honestly really wanted to see that. And I went back and forth because, part of me, when the playoffs started, I wanted the easy path. Like, okay, yeah, I kind of hope, we don't have to mess around with the Spurs. I'm going to be real with you. I'm going to keep it 100. I didn't really want to play them. I thought it'd be easier just to go through somebody else. But the more I messed around on Twitter and was going back and forth with fans, these Spurs fans out here, the more I began to want the Spurs. Because I think we need to go ahead and see what time it is. We need to go ahead and box with them right now. So again, I am glad that, the Western Conference the championship series is right where it needs to be. We need to box with those boys and see what time it is. So let's talk about some history here. You hear a lot of times people keep talking about, well, the Spurs won the season series 4-1. But when you really look into that, and these are not excuses, these are facts. Yes, they beat us 4 out of 5. But number one, regular season is regular season. I can assure you this is not the same Thunder team that the Spurs were beating during the regular season. Now, with that being said, the Spurs are not the same team. I believe the Spurs have improved as well. But that last game specifically, the last time they beat us 116-106 on February 4th, I think Oklahoma City, we were coming off a back-to-back. 2 of those games, as a matter of fact, we were coming off back-to-backs that we lost to them. But in that last game, I think we only played 8 players. None of our better players played in that game. Now, I can't remember why, but I do remember, if you look at that box score, I'm surprised they only beat us by 10 because a lot of our guys didn't play in that game, whereas the Spurs played all of their guys. And so a win's a win, but I'm just saying, let's eliminate that one. And, in looking at the other games, like I said, we came off 2 back-to-backs. Not excuses, just facts. But it is what it is. They beat us 4 out of 5, but it doesn't matter. The playoffs is a whole different beast. There was also the context where AJ was not AJ at that time. AJ Mitchell is a bona fide monster. And he is something the Spurs are going to have to worry about. He was not hooping like that. Now, granted, Spurs fans will probably say Dylan Harper wasn't hooping like that. Okay, so respect both ways. Okay, but playoffs are going to bring about a whole different intensity, than a regular season game. So let's keep it 100 on that. I mean, at the end of the day, this battle is going to be epic. It's going to come down to the superstar battle. When you think about it, Wemby really gets offended when people tell him that he has this. I'm losing the word that I'm looking for, but basically it's battle with Chet. Because Wemby's kind of like, bro, look, I'm out of his league. You can compare me to Shea. This is me versus Shea, but he gets real offended when people tell him that he has a rivalry personal vendetta with Chet, even though it's very obvious. If you look back at some of the highlights and some of the quotes, Wemby does not like Chet. And that goes all the way back to that under 19 stuff they were doing when Chet won an MVP of the tournament, whatever, so on and so forth. And Wemby's kind of been out for blood when it comes to Chet ever since then. But the real battle does come down to Shea versus Wemby, just as far as leading their teams. Okay? Who is going to play biggest in this series? Now, the fact that Wemby is going to have to sit there and watch Shea get his MVP trophy, my guess is that's probably going to light a little fire under it, you know. But, you know, Shea has the right temperament that Shea's going to play the same regardless of the circumstances. We all know that. The big question is really going to come down to how will the Spurs contain Shea. Now, if you look at the Lakers, they went all in and threw every gimmick defense at OKC that they possibly could. I don't necessarily think the Spurs will need to do that because they have more effective point of attack defenders on their team. And so I really believe, you know, Castle, I expect Castle to be the one that will guard Shea. And I do think Shea's still going to give him that work, but if I'm being real, which I also think Castle's, nobody's going to stop Shea, but Castle can really make Shea work. So, I mean, they have a really good, a good guard that they can put on Shea to at least that will make him work hard so they don't have to double and triple team. Wemby, you know, one thing that I believe that Oklahoma City is going to have to do to be successful is we got to do something to make sure that Wemby can't just camp out in that lane. And that's really why they were able to beat us 4 out of 5 times during the regular season, because our three-point shooting was so porous that he was never really threatened to have to come out of the lane. He was really able to kind of sit there and patrol the paint because we were bricking threes. I remember Caruso was terrible. He was really bad. I mean, really, most of our three-point shooting was just really, it was terrible. And, you know, the last big thing that I would look at, I mean, you know, even though Shea was named Mr. Clutch, I feel good about him in pressure moments. But just that ability, will Wemby press? Now, I haven't watched enough of the Spurs to know how he will react in a playoff setting where he feels that he may be the MVP. Will he press? Will the pressure get the best of him? I mean, I don't know. I do know how I expect OKC to act because we've been there. I know how I expect them to respond. But that's a big question is, will those pressure moments get the best of the Spurs? We'll find out. So the real battle comes down to this: depth versus size. Now, no doubt about it, Wemby is a unicorn of all unicorns. There's really nothing you can do about that. They have that advantage. And I still believe it's going to be important that we challenge him. I don't think we can go in there doing floaters and, fall away jump shots and things of that nature. I think you got to go right at him. You got to attack him. The goal has got to be attack him and hopefully even try to get him in foul trouble. One thing I do think the Spurs have that other teams that we played at this point have not had is the Spurs also have a good bench. I mean, they were starting Harrison Barnes during the season, and so now they're bringing him off the bench. So where you're bringing him off the bench and Harper off the bench and Carter off the bench. So, I mean, they, Luke Cornett, they are not, they're not going to have that big fall off like we've seen with the Lakers and Phoenix. I mean, when I say these two teams are very similar, they're very similar. Now, I do believe the Thunder has a deeper bench than San Antonio, but San Antonio has a good enough bench. And that Harper, like I said, he can start for most teams. He can start for this team if they really wanted to do that. But I do believe that the depth of both teams is what's going to make this series such a dynamic watch. You know, the fact is that you have two common philosophies. And a lot of people will tell you, well, hey, the Thunder got Presti from the San Antonio organization. But at the end of the day, the philosophies are very similar. You have two deep teams that focus on defense that like to get out and run. This is set up to be one of the best conference finals. And to be quite frank with you, this is probably your championship. I don't believe any team out of the East can beat whoever wins this series. It's going to come down to, like I said before, both teams like to get out and run. And it's really going to be about who can win that transition battle and get easy buckets. If one team is turning the ball over too much, neither one of these teams are going to do well if they fall behind. Now, I've seen both teams get hot, but I wouldn't say three-point shooting is a real strength of either team. And if I'm keeping it 100 with you, I trust the Spurs three-point shooting over my own team. We run so hot and cold. So that does honestly concern me from the Thunder standpoint, is that we can get ice cold shooting threes. And so it's going to be really important for whoever comes out on top. That's a team that's got to win that turnover battle and get out in transition and win that battle as well. So let's talk about the X factors in the series. Now, once more, this is a Thunder podcast, so I can talk much more about the Thunder than I can about the Spurs. I've done my research. I know the Spurs. I know who they are. I know what they're about. But as far as digging in deep, I know the people that need to know that, and that's Mark Daigneault, my players. From the other side of it, Lou Dort. I do believe we're going to have to put Lou Dort on Castle. Now, it'll be interesting to see how Mark Daigneault approaches this, because Castle likes to drive the ball. Now, one thing I will give him credit for is he has really gotten a lot better shooting that three-pointer. He's knocking them down. I think he made like 5 against Minnesota in the closeout game. But on the flip side of that, Dort has got to be able to put a body on Castle so that he can't just, drive to the basket at will. But I'm jumping ahead, but Dort's also got to be able to hit enough threes to keep the Spurs honest. That's going to be a critical component of this game, is our defensive players, Lou Dort, Caruso, Cason Wallace. Those guys have got to be able to shoot threes efficiently enough where we can keep them on the floor. Because the X factor is really going to be not only Dort, but our defenders, period. We have to be able to play those guys, because San Antonio is very strong at guard. They are very strong at guard, and we're going to need our defensive guys out there. I'm not necessarily sure how much of a role Isaiah Joe and McCain would have in this series. I hope they do, but I'm concerned about their defense against the San Antonio guard. So again, this is really going to be a dynamic back and forth. It's a chess match where I think coach is going to have a huge role to play in this game as far as knowing when to play who and who to play when. My next X factor is J-Dub. Obviously, he missed the whole last series with a hamstring. And it's really a shame, because against Phoenix, that's the first time I've seen him in a long time. Looked like the fastest, most athletic player on the floor. And it was really a shame when he pulled that hamstring again. He was looking really, really good, explosive. His shot was looking great. And so he is going to be a real X factor in this matchup versus the Spurs. If J-Dub is J-Dub, that is going to go a long way towards Oklahoma City beating San Antonio. Can Oklahoma City beat San Antonio without J-Dub? Yes, I believe so. But it's going to be a whole lot harder if he's still hobbled. That's just keeping it real. Chet. We talked about Chet. I do think that Oklahoma City is equipped more than most teams to handle Wemby. But Chet is really going to have to step up. If I'm keeping it 100 with you, Chet has come up small in our previous games versus the Spurs. But I've seen Chet, as the season progressed, become much more aggressive. And so he's going to have a key role to play as far as spacing the floor and pulling Wemby out of that lane. And that's going to come back again to what Mark Daigneault decides to do with our defensive matchups, because he typically doesn't use Chet on Wemby. They normally don't guard each other. And so it'll be interesting to see how his spacing impacts the way the Spurs are defending the Thunder. That's going to be a piece to really look at. And, of course, the X factor is just like I spoke about earlier. The Spurs actually have good depth on their team as well. When you're coming off the bench with Harrison Barnes, a former starter, Dylan Harper, Luke Cornett, I mean, that second string unit for them is not going to come in and just fall apart. I mean, they got some talent. And so their secondary scoring is going to have a huge role to play. And if they don't play well, our second unit is good enough to run off on them. But if they do what they're capable of doing, this game, or these games have the potential to be back and forth, that these teams are just so evenly matched. I spoke a little bit about this earlier in terms of talking about just the whole chess match. You know, Mitch and Mark. You know, both of these coaches have inherited beautiful situations. Both of these coaches have a focus on defense. And I know I've been seeing that it sounds like Coach Pop has been in Mitch's ear, trying to give him some tips from the old head per se. And so my guess is Popovich is probably at the Spurs practices based on his experience. And you'll see that they're showing Spurs have a lot of, Tim Duncan's been in the crowd, Ginobili, and all these old Spur players have been there trying to kind of, give some influence to the young Spur team. And so my guess is that Pop is kind of giving their coach some tips on how to coach in this. He's not experienced in this situation. So having a Hall of Fame coach in your ear is not a bad thing. This coaching chess match is going to be a bigger part of this series than most people realize. It is my firm belief that this series could be won or lost based on coaching. Which coach is going to be willing to make the proper adjustments, proper rotations, call the right plays, call timeouts at the right times, executing appropriately, defensive schemes, win the zone, win the man-in-man, so on and so forth. This dynamic coaching is going to play a huge part in this series. And what I'm most excited to see tomorrow is from Oklahoma City is who Coach Daigneault starts tomorrow with J-Dub coming back. Now, do I expect him probably to go with the same starting lineup he typically does when we're healthy? I do. I know a lot of people have been asking, hey, should A.J. Mitchell be starting? I can't see him doing that. I could be wrong, but we'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what that matchup would be. Now, if it were me, I would love to see us bring Ihart off the bench and start the game off right away by getting Wemby out of the lane. I'm going Chet, Lou Dort, A.J. Mitchell, J-Dub, and Shea. And I'm going 5 out right away. And there where you got Wemby, he cannot camp out in that lane at all. You got rebounding, you got offense, and you got defense. Do I expect Daigneault to do that? No, I don't. With the Spurs, you pretty much already know who their starting lineup is going to be. They pretty much run the same starting lineup all the time. And so, again, the coaching chess match is going to be dynamic. So, my own X factors, and I've spoken to this several times throughout the broadcast. I firmly believe that Oklahoma City's shooting will define this series. Because when I say the 3D guys must be efficient, San Antonio's strength outside of the unicorn is their guard play. In Vassell, Castle, Fox, and Harper, they are loaded at guard. All of those guys are absolutely phenomenal. I give them their props. We're going to have to be able to play some of our better defensive guards, Lou Dort, Kaysen, Caruso. At least 2 or 3 of those guys got to play a decent amount. And in order to do that, we can't allow the Spurs to cheat off of them because their shooting is not efficient. So if nothing else, I'm hoping during this time off that Oklahoma City has had, I hope those guys have stayed in the lab and working on their threes, because That is a huge X factor for this series, is how will OKC shoot the three. When you look back at the games, we lost 4 out of 5. We talked about that. The main reason we lost 4 out of 5 is we shot the ball like crap. That is a key X factor. My second X factor is OKC cannot fall behind. For that same reason, we're not an efficient enough three-point shooting team to let the Spurs just jump out on us. The Spurs don't turn the ball over that much. So what works with most teams is our pressure forces turnovers, and we get those 10, 15-1 runs. I don't see a lot of that happening with the Spurs because, again, they have the guard play to combat our guard play. So it's going to be critical that if something's not working, that Coach Dagnall makes the adjustment and does some substituting timely. We cannot afford to fall behind. My next X factor, Chet must play big. Chet must play big. And I feel better about this because, again, as I noted earlier, Chet has been he's been much more aggressive the second part of the season, much more. I need to see him stand up to Wemby. I need to see him take it personal that Wemby has continued to disrespect him. That is a huge X factor. If Chet is being aggressive, if Chet is not shying away from Wemby, because that is honestly what he's appeared to do so far. I hope we see a different version of Chet. J-Dub, I spoke about that a little bit earlier. We've got to have him at 100%, offensively and defensively. With him, Shea, and AJ Mitchell, we have 3 dynamic playmakers. But where J-Dub is probably most underrated is his defense. He's long, he's athletic, and he's fast. And he has the ability to combat the Spurs guards. That is a huge X factor. My last X factor is, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, can Isaiah Joe and McCain defend efficiently enough that we can put them on the floor to use their perimeter shooting? We are going to need one of them, maybe both of them, to hit some shots. Now, I'm more confident in Isaiah Joe's defense than I am in McCain's defense. But in case you guys haven't noticed, actually, McCain was starting to steal some of Isaiah Joe's minutes. You can do that against the Lakers in Phoenix. I'm not so sure you can do that against the Spurs. So that's going to be another X factor. So my predictions, with all of this being said, I firmly, in my heart of hearts, believe that we win this series. I don't think it will be easy. I predict, initially I thought in 6 games. But after I thought about this more today, I feel if we win our first 2 games at home, I think we'll win it in 5. Because then I see us going win-win, splitting in San Antonio, and then winning in the closeout game. So if we win the first 2, I say OKC in 5. If we split the first 2, then I see it going 6, more likely 7. Because then I see it going split, both teams winning at home potentially, and then OKC wins the 7th one. Or split, and then OKC wins Game 6 in San Antonio. That's my thought. I do think we win the series. I do not think it's going to be easy at all. It's going to be very stressful for OKC fans. It will not be easy. I do think the Finals MVP will be Shea. Once again, he will double back with the MVP and Finals MVP and put himself in esteemed company as a Hall of Famer. And I think as this wraps up, this rivalry will become official. Completely official. So here's my final take as we get ready to wrap this up. This is literally the perfect time And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn this music down because I really want you to hear my final take here. This is literally the perfect time to play the Spurs. And I'm saying this from the perspective of win or losing. Obviously, I expect to win. But worst case scenario, we lose. Why is this a perfect time? You're playing the team that is your threat for the next 8 to 10 years. You have real-time data on the team that is going to be your threat for the next decade. In this draft, you have picks 12 and 17 and a second-round pick. You have assets. You're gathering real-time data against this team that can be addressed immediately. Hypothetically, Wemby eats us up in the Western Conference Finals. If you're Sam Presti, you go into this draft and you say, you know what? I've definitely got to get some more size, right? So then you do what you need to do. You make these free agent decisions involving Dort, Ihart, Kenrich, based on deficiencies that you just experienced versus the Spurs. Now, you gather this same data if you win. Okay? So if and when we defeat the Spurs, let's say we still struggle in some areas, Presti can still address that quickly. So my final take is this is a perfect time to play the Spurs because we have 2 picks and we have some critical decisions to make with our roster. And we're able to get data, real-time data, where we can address it immediately. I want to thank you all for joining me for this Western Conference preview. Hopefully you were able to get something out of it. I am really looking forward to this. I think it's going to be a very, very entertaining series. I hope we can have a competitive game where we win. And more, I just hope that it's not one of those situations where people are blaming a ref and whining and crying the whole series. Let's just enjoy some good basketball and watch OKC win a back-to-back championship. So again, please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I want to thank you for joining me on Dr. D's Takes. And let's have a great, my bad, I said welcome. I meant to say thank you for joining me. Like, share, and subscribe. I plan to do some more podcasts for you guys after each game. So please make sure you look and, again, share that information. We'll discuss the series game by game. Be safe and be good to one another. Class dismissed.